Thank you everyone for joining. We can kind of see the numbers filtering in as we go. I know that we're supposed to have some people that I kind of managed to look for in advance, because we try to also organize you into groups later on. So I'm gonna make sure that everyone that said that they're gonna be here in certain groups is here. So some of you may know me in the context of the Sloan project. That's where I met some of you in person, some of you only over Zoom, and many of you in conversations over email through this fantastic initiative. Today I'm gonna actually speak to you on wearing a different hat, which is either my hat as a professor of business, or the hat of a former hacker, which is something that I used to do that plays into what we're going to talk about today. And the aim of our session together is to get you highly familiar with the concepts of the blockchain and how they can be relevant to your careers in entertainment. When I spoke to the dean a few months ago about this idea, she shared with me her interest in actually expanding the kind of reach of the school and of the programs in terms of you guys having access to those types of details and how you can use them in your careers. And we thought it would be a good idea to break this kind of meeting into two. The first meeting, today's meeting, will be primarily focused on technology and just getting you acquainted with all the terms and how to use it. Some of you may have heard about the term blockchain or Bitcoin. Some of you may have even kind of tried to look online and type something like, what is blockchain or what is Bitcoin, and saw a 5-minute YouTube video. And my belief, without knowing anything about you, is that you left those with a feeling that it somehow has to do with distributed ledger, centralized trust, but that you don't really know how it can be applied to your business tomorrow. And this was me a few years ago when I read about it for the first time, and I said, okay, I want to know what it is. And I kind of started looking online and reading short articles and watching a few videos, but somehow I didn't really feel that I can actually implement it. I kind of knew what it is, big picture, but I was left at a level of a kind of lay person who knows something but doesn't know a lot. And then I spent a lot of time learning about it. And my aim today is to take you to the level that is one above that. So the point is not to kind of give you a lot of like jargon words that are kind of going to impress you, but actually to carry you through some of the technical aspects of what blockchain is, how it can be used and implemented. So you will be at the level where a conversation about that would not be above your head unless you're talking to an engineer who actually codes stuff. That's the only level above what you're going to do today. So we're actually going to talk about the details of the technology and how it really works. I should say in advance that we're doing it on Zoom, as you can tell, and there, over a couple of hours of Zoom, there will be some problems, technical problems. Generally, if you think that there's a buffering issue on your end, it might not be even a buffering issue, it just be the speed by which I speak, which would seem to you like it's something not right on your end. It's actually, that's how really I am speaking fast. So I would ask all of you to also slow me down every time you feel that I'm speaking too fast, and ask me again and again to repeat things that you think are not clear and to go over topics again and again. I know it's a kind of a big crowd with dozens of you out there, but my intent is to make it as personal as possible. So if one of you says, I'm not sure I understood it, I want you to go over it again, I will do that. I want to carry all of you through the multiple kind of hurdles of understanding it, because there are some technical aspects that might be challenging. And I want to make sure that we all carry together. The way I will do it also on my end is I will break this session. The pedagogy is going to be that I'm going to start very simple, and I'm going to then pause and try to look at the eyes of as many of you as I can and say, is it clear? And I'm going to move one by one and say, is it clear, Giovanni? Is it clear, Yvette? I'm going to ask you so I can be sure that you got this part, because what I'm going to do next, I'm going to say, okay, now what I said before is incomplete. Let me make it more complicated and build on the previous thing and change things. And then again, we're going to pause and I'm going to make sure that everyone understands what I said. And then I'm going to say, actually what I said before is incomplete. Let me make it even more complicated. So there's going to be 4 stages to today's session. In each stage, you're going to feel that you got something, and then I'm going to break it and make it even more complex. So it's really essential and important that at any point when you feel that I finished one kind of part of it, you feel, okay, I got it. because it's going to get more and more complicated. Towards the end, this class was taught multiple times. I never did it over Zoom. Most often when I teach this class to MBA students or to engineers, I actually use whiteboard, and a lot of it is done in a very interactive way, which is what I'm going to try to do today. So I have another screen here with a whiteboard, which I'm going to try to use for the most part to actually walk you through the slides step by step. So I'm going to draw them manually so you can see all the steps and how they're being kind of developed. I have the chat window open. I know that you joined as muted, but feel free to unmute yourself and jump in with questions, with anything that you want. My point is not to kind of speak at you, but actually to really be interactive. I also would prefer, if it's not hard for you, that you keep your videos on as much as you can, so I can kind of see and get a sense from you whether you got what I said or whether it's not clear. This is what I would do in a real classroom. So the concept of blockchain is a complicated concept that on top of which we have a lot of technologies that are kind of resting right now. The most popular one is the Bitcoin, which is what I'm going to start with in a second, but it's also a platform that allows people to interact outside of the world of money in contexts that will be relevant to you guys. The way I like to start talking about that is by actually taking the angle of the cryptography component of that and telling you first what cryptographic aspects, what security aspects it solves, by talking about something that looks totally independent and unrelated, and then you'll see how it's at the heart of everything that we're going to speak about in a second. So the very first thing I want to talk about is cryptography and security. Security has been of interest to people since the dawn of time, since secrets existed. Back in villages where people didn't want to share stuff with others, they used to find ways to just hide information. And over the years, it evolved to a level by which people actually created the idea of secret codes in writing. So Julius Caesar basically had the idea that it would be great for him to communicate with his generals over the battlefield, with secret codes that the enemy wouldn't understand. And he invented the first code that kind of we use in a lot of history books, which is called after him the Caesar code. What Caesar codes are, and you probably see my white screen right now, is if you have text, right? The text is I love AFI. Julius Caesar's idea was that you take a key, which would be, if we're using a Latin English, let's say the number 1. And what we do is we add one letter to each letter before. So I becomes J, L becomes M, element O, P, V, W, E, F. This would be how Julius Caesar would encrypt a message to his soldiers saying, I love AFI. The letters that we are going to use for notation is P for plain text, K for key, and C for cipher. You're going to see them throughout today's talk. But the point is that you take the text, you add one letter to every letter in the alphabet, and you get the secret code. When a general gets this text and wants to go back to Caesar's instruction, he goes to the key -1, and then he basically subtracts from J 1, it becomes I, from M 1 becomes L, and he gets gradually the words I love AFI. Okay, that's the simplest code that was invented hundreds of years ago by Julius Caesar. The key here is that both Caesar and his generals had to know that if you get the number 1, you add 1. If you get the number +3, you add 3 letters. If you get the number +25, you add 25 letters, such that if you're starting with the letter Z, by 25 letters, you go back to the letter Y, and so on. So it kind of goes circular. But at the heart of it is you have to know what's the mechanism by which you interact, which is you add or subtract letters, and you have to know the key. And because there are 26 possible keys, Julius Caesar can actually give each general a different key. So one general got the number +1, another one got the number +3, and they could all interact with Caesar without actually listening to each other. This was Julius Caesar's idea of cryptography. On the one hand, it's great because the enemy just sees something that looks like J, M, P, W, F, B, G, J, and can't really tell what it means. On the other hand, it's pretty simple to break this code. You kind of try to add 1, add 2, add 3, add 4. At some point, you break this thing. So it was a complex idea at the time, but not too complex in our time, where you can just have a computer solve it within seconds. But even since the days of Julius Caesar, and up to the 1980s, so many, many hundreds of years, there was a demand by people to invent something known as a public key cryptography, or a way to encode information without meeting. Because here's the thing. In this method that Julius Caesar invented, there's one critical problem. And the problem is that before, if me and, say, Katrina are interacting, we have to first meet in person, sit in a room. I have to teach you what's the way we're going to use the code. We have to agree that the key between me and Katrina is +3. And then she can go to the field, and from ever now on, we can use +3 - 3 to interact. But if I want to change something, if I want to say, hey, Katrina, from now on, I want to move to +5, I have to go and meet her in person and say, okay, let's move to +5. So everything requires a meeting in person. We have to actually get together, agree on the system, agree on the key, and then separate. And it's really hard to change things or to adapt things if you're not in the same room. And for a while, there was a need by people to invent a different way to interact that doesn't require us to meet and be in the same room. And it took hundreds of years until the 80s to actually solve it. And we're going to do it together right now. To do it, I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to think out loud with me on how you can resolve this story. And the story is a story of two people. One is a woman named Alice. She has 3 legs somehow. That's Alice. Oops, just ruined her. And Alice has a chest full of gold. And she wants to send this gold to her friend, Bob, who sits far on the other side of a forest. Unfortunately, in the forest lived the villain, let's just call him villain. And if she just sends the chest as is through the forest to Bob, he will open the chest, he will take the gold, and all the things that she tried to send to him will be stolen. So she says, okay, one way by which I can actually send the gold to Bob without the villain taking it is I can actually put a kind of, there's a little lock here I can put, and then I can send the locked chest to Bob on the other side. The villain wouldn't be able to open it, and it got to Bob perfectly. The thing is, for this to happen, Alice and Bob had to meet prior, create 2 copies of keys that lock and unlock the little lock here, and then she can lock it on her side and make sure that none of the coins can be opened by the villain, send it to the other side, and Bob can unlock it with the keys. So they both have the same key that they met before and agreed on. And the question is, could you guys think of a way by which Alice can send the chest to Bob such that it's locked throughout the way, he cannot open it, the villain cannot open it, without Alice and Bob ever meeting? So they never share keys. Alice has a key and Bob doesn't have a copy of that key, and they can still send the chest through the forest without the villain being able to open it. The floor is yours. Give me ideas of how you can do that. I don't know if I'm gonna wait long enough. You're gonna come up with something, but
can it be like a timed lock? Like it opens at a certain time?
So Michael has a great idea. He said maybe maybe Alice create a timed lock, sends it, and so if I'm understanding correctly, it's basically a lock that opens itself. So it's not that they have to meet and agree on what the keys are. It just creates a way by which she locks it, and she sends the box, and she hopes that it's going to get to Bob in the next, say, 2 hours. And as long as it gets there before the 2 hours expired, it's going to be okay, because it's in 2 hours it opens. So if the box is in the villain's hand in 2 hours, he got the money. But if it got all the way to Bob, got the money. It's a perfect solution. It works. It has a flaw, which is kind of like where I was heading, which is if it takes too long for the box to get to Bob and it stays too long in the forest, then the villain can open it. So it's solving the problem. It has still a flaw that we want to maybe overcome, which is how can we do that such that the expiration doesn't lead to the villain being opened. I see that Matthew says Bob makes the box and sends it to Alice unlocked. Alice locks it when sending it back. So another suggestion is that Bob sends an empty box to Alice, and Alice locks it with the gold inside, sends it back. So it does pass to the forest locked, but how will Bob open it in this case? Oh, so Bob has the key. So how does Alice lock it if Bob has the key? I think I have a way that would work. I think it's right. Maybe it's like a box that you can just lock. Kind of when you close it, it gets locked. So this way, Bob makes the box that kind of is locked. Alice puts stuff inside, sends it back, and then it gets to Bob locked. Potentially gonna work. The kind of magic here would be in a technical way of building a box that kind of can be locked, but I think it's gonna work. Sebastian does Alice needs to be able to open it, or is the gold already inside and she just needs to send it? She needs to be able to. She needs to be so it's not. First, she needs to have an open box that she can put stuff inside, and from then on, it goes away. Do pagers exist in this world? Let's say that no, because it's going to be too easy. But I think what you're suggesting, which is true, is that if you can have people basically that you trust do the entire process, then it's also a way to solve the problem. We're looking for a way that doesn't require Alice and Bob to trust each other. They can still operate without actually having met before. Okay, I'm gonna give you the answer. You kind of touched it to an extent, and I'm gonna give you the full answer, and then we're gonna solve it together. Okay, so here's how it's gonna actually work. And even though it would sound trivial, it took hundreds of years for people to actually understand this and turn it into a way that will actually help us understand blockchain in a few seconds. So here again is Alice. And here again is Bob. And here's the forest. So here's the magic of how it's going to work. Alice will take a box, a regular box that she has, and we'll put the gold inside, just like she did before. And she's going to close the box, and then she's going to put a lock on it, a lock that only she has the key for. So Bob cannot open it. And then she will send this box to Bob through the forest. So the box passes through the forest to Bob, who gets the box with a lock, and he cannot open it. He cannot open it because he doesn't have the key. The key only is in Alice's hand. What he can do, though, is add another lock. So Bob actually takes a lock that he has, and he puts a second lock on the same box. And then he sends the box back to Alice. So Alice now gets a box that she put the content in, and there are two locks on this box. One of them is hers, and one of them is a lock that she didn't put there. She can use her key to remove one of the locks, the one that she put there, and now she has a box with a lock by someone else that she cannot open. So even though she created the content of the box, it's her box, the box is now locked from her with a key that belongs to someone else. And then she sends the box a second time through the forest to Bob, And Bob now gets a box with only one lock, the lock that he put there, and he uses his own key to unlock the box. That's how he gets the gold. So what we had here is a system by which Alice and Bob could trade the box. They could pass it from one to another through the forest without ever meeting in person. Alice has her own key, Bob has his own key, and they could still exchange information without meeting in person. This solves the problem of Julius Caesar. He doesn't have to meet each and every general every time he wants to change something. He can just communicate with them as long as they trade. That's the key thing. They trade the efficiency for security. That's what I mean by that. This system is secure in that throughout the interaction, when it went to the forest, it was always secure. The villain could not open the box, but it required 3 times more interactions. Sending, getting it back, sending it a second time. It's a lot more effort technologically for the same security, and that's a trade-off. So this system allows Alice and Bob to actually interact, but it comes at a cost, which is they have to do a lot more. In the world of technology, this is not a problem because things happen so fast anyhow that we don't really care that we're paying with some effort, computer effort, to solve a problem. Let me pause here for a second and get from some of you thumbs up on the screen telling me if it all made sense, because this is going to be a big kind of understanding that will take us to the next step. I see a few. I'm going to randomly look at Katie. Everything makes sense. Perfect. Spencer, everything makes sense. Fantastic. Okay, random 2 people that I saw were the first to be called. So we got this idea. Now let's take it from imaginary world of villains and into the world of technology. Here's how this plays out in the world of technology. Let's say there are still 2 people. One is Alice, and one is Bob. Why am I doing 3 legs? Not sure. And they want to be able to exchange information in a similar fashion. The key thing that people in the 80s called a secure connection had to satisfy 3 things. It had to be encrypted. It had to also satisfy the level of integrity that's required. And 3, it had to satisfy something called authentication. I'm going to explain in a second what those 3 are and what we care about them. But in a second, those are the 3 requirements that people had from the system that will allow people to interact in a secure way without anyone ever being able to steal something. The solution comes from mathematics, and it comes in the following form. Mathematicians were able to invent a cool idea where you can actually create keys that have this unique property, which is if you encrypt something with key 1, then key 1 cannot lock and unlock it. It can only lock it, and key 2 is the one that unlocks it. So whatever you encrypted with 1 is opened by 2, whatever encrypted with 2, opened by 1. That's a mathematical property. In a second, I'm going to explain to you how it works for those of you who are overachievers who want to know the math of that, but that's not necessary. But just go with me in that there's a way in mathematics to create a pair of keys, always 2, that have this remarkable unique property, such that whatever you lock with 1 cannot be opened with the same one anymore. You lock it with 1, you can open it with 2. If you lock with 2, you can open with 1, so they reverse each other. It doesn't really matter which one is 1 and which one is 2, but as long as you lock with 1, 2 opens. If you lock with 2, 1 opens. And those keys magically work on text. For those of you who are overachievers, I'm going to give you 1 second intuition of how it works. Mathematically, it relies on this fantastic phenomena in power analysis, which is if you take some number, let's say number 3, to the power of x, and that to the power of y, it's exactly as if you did 3 to the power of y to the power of x. So this is key 1, this is key 2, this is key 2, this is key 1. Somehow, taking a text turning this text into a number using a mathematical function that multiplies this by a power of x and then again by power of y is equivalent to doing this y to x. So this is basically one key, this is another key. Doesn't matter, you don't have to remember that. That's only for you to kind of get a sense of what I'm aiming for. What you do have to understand is that we can create two keys that one locks something that the other can unlock and vice versa. Now, we're gonna call them, we're gonna name those keys, key number one, the private key, and key number two, the public key. In a second, you're gonna know why. For now, just on names. We're gonna call one of them private, one of them public, but the important thing is that if you lock something with your private, you can unlock with the public, and if you lock with the public, you can open with the private. So in the world of cryptography, if Alice wants to talk to Bob, she needs to first create a pair of keys like that on her side. One is gonna be the private, one is gonna be the public. At the same time, Bob, on his side, creates also a pair of keys. One is his private, one is his public. And now comes the answer to why we call them private and public. We call them private and public because the private key you hold in a safe in the vault next to your heart in a very safe place that no one else in the world gets to know. And the public one you share with everyone. So Alice actually put on the internet, here's a public key and everyone in the world can get it. So Alice can share her public key with Bob, such that, I'm going to use different colors, such that Bob has access to Alice's public key. At the same time, Bob shares his public key with the entire world, such that Alice can have Bob's public key. And here's how encryption works in this world. Alice has two keys, one private, one public. Her public is also shared with Bob, and she also has the two keys from Bob that he shared with her. If Alice wants to send a message to Bob, she does the following thing. First, she takes the message, I love you, and she uses Bob's public key to encrypt it. So what she gets is something that looks like this. A message. Because Alice used Bob's public key to create this message, and she doesn't have his private key, she cannot go back. So even though she knows what was here, and she knows what's here, and she knows this, she cannot go back. There's no way to take the message and go back to the original. This is the equivalent of Alice having a box that she locked with her lock and got back with someone else's lock. She can lock the box, but she cannot open it. Once she has this deciphered message, she sends this to Bob. Bob gets this thing. And because Bob does have the private key that corresponds to this public key, he can unlock it and get the message, I love you. So the key thing in the world of public and private keys is that everyone shares one key of the two that they have and gives it to everyone else. And if I want to send a message to Iris, I find Iris's public key, encrypt a message to Iris, and send it to her. And because she's the only one who has the private key, she can open it. Anyone else who gets the message will see the message, but will not be able to open it because they don't have the private key. Does it make sense to everyone right now? Michael?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Brett? Okay, I got the thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So far, it's clear. It's gonna get even more complicated in a second. So we got the world of encryption solved. We create pairs of keys. We share one of those keys, and everyone else who wants to talk to us uses our key to send messages to us, and we can just open them with our private key. So far, it's easy. Now, let's talk about integrity. Even with this message, even with this system that seems pretty good, there's actually a big problem. Because if there's actually a villain sitting here in the middle, there's still something terrible he can do, the villain. What he can do is he can trace the message as it floats between Alice and Bob, and he can tamper with it. Meaning, even though the message is encrypted, even though what he sees is only an encrypted message that looks like this, he can still take this encrypted message and change one letter from Z to X. So he can change something without being able to actually open it. This would mean that when Bob gets it, he doesn't get what was sent originally. He gets something else that looks similar, but a bit different. And when he opens it with his own key, he might get, instead of I love you, I hate you. And he would blame Alice for that. So the villain in this system cannot steal the message. He cannot open it and actually read it, but he can still change things, change some numbers on the way, and make it so that Bob thinks that the message he got was incorrect or flawed. In the world of, it's very hard to change something that will actually lead to I hate you, but in the world of banking, for example, imagine that I send something to my bank and a villain looks at the transaction on the way and changes one of the zeros and ones in a message from 0 to 1. Even though they have no idea what they did, they may have just made the sum of money that I moved to the bank double. So if you change randomly some numbers out there, you can actually cause a lot of damage, because maybe this number turns when you open the box to the number that leads to the how much money you move, and you just made someone pay someone else double the amount of money or half the amount of money and cause all the problems without knowing what you did. So you can just change some numbers on the way and cause damage without actually knowing what you're doing, but still being very, very harmful. If you're a villain hacker and there are billions of transactions going over the world all the time, and you just randomly change bits here and there, no one can know, you 1 out of billion times will actually make someone pay too much money or too little money, which is damaging enough. So what we want to add to the system is a way to know that whatever went through the lines between Alice and Bob was never tampered with. This is integrity. We want to find a way for Bob to know that whatever he got not only was not opened by anyone, but also was not harmed by anyone. And for this, we're going to introduce now the most important concept of the day today, which is a hash. That is the concept that's at the heart of blockchain, which will be coming back again and again and again in the next hours. A hash table is magically a mathematical function that takes texts here, A, B, C, D, E, runs it through this function called hash, and what comes out on the other side is a number. A very small number, and this number doesn't depend on how long this is. This could be an entire book, it could be volumes of text, it doesn't matter. Whatever you put here comes up as a number that's very, very small. So you can take lots of text, very small text, and you always get a number that's maybe 10 digits long. And this number corresponds to this text such that if you don't know this number, you can't go back and know which text it was that created it. If I give it number 252, you have no idea what made it. But if I give you the big text and you run the hash function, you always get the same number. I'll give an intuition to how it works. Here's a simple hash function. The simple hash function text is the text that Alice wrote was, I love you. A hash function could be count how many times a vowel appears in the text. So you take the letter I, the letter O, the letter O, E, O, and U, and you get a hash of that, which is the number 5. So 5 is a nice hash that takes this text and takes it to one number. If I give it number 5, you have no idea what text created it. There are many, many texts that could lead to the number 5. But if I give you this text, it's very easy to calculate a hash. So the hash needs to be a number that takes big texts and immediately turns them into a single number in a way that you can't go back from. Now, the one I had right now, the count vowels, is a bit too simplistic. There are just too many things that will lead up to number 5. So it's not a good hash. But over the years, since 1960 to the year 2020, mathematicians have worked tirelessly on creating more and more complex hash functions with the same logic. You give it long text, you dump it in, and on the other side, you get a number that is impossible to go back from. But if I give you the same text, it's very easy to calculate a hash and know that you get the same one. I want to now give you an example of a hash function by sharing with you my screen. You all see my screen? I'm showing you a website, great, that generates hash functions. The particular hash function I'm showing you right now is called MD5. It's short for Message Digest 5, because over the years, the US has created many competitions by mathematicians to come up with hash functions. The first one was Message Digest 1. Then after a few years, it was number 2, 3. And right now, the world is settled on MD5, Message Digest 5, as the hash function that everyone uses, which satisfies those rules. If you give it lots of text, it gives you a number. I want to show you how it works. I'm going to type here the words I love AFI. What you see below is a way by which the hash function generates a number. So this what you see here, the string of characters, is a number, a very big number. It is reflected with characters and numbers, with letters and with numbers. But the bottom line is you see that it always has the same number of digits. Doesn't matter if I add more text, it stays the same. But what's amazing about it is that it's very, very fast. I can just add one character and it changes. And the nice thing about it, if I write I love AFI, and I just change the capital F to small f, look at the digits below, changes entirely. So a small change, any change in one bit of the text makes it entirely different, but always the same. So if I write AFI, it always gives me the same digest below. And if I just change it to small f, everything looks totally different. So tiny change of even one bit in the message changes entirely the hashed number. Does it make sense? Great.
I have a quick question. Moran.
Yes, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see who's asking a question. I'll then stop sharing on this side. That, thank you. Back on the screen. Sorry, I see you. This one. Okay, now I see you.
Okay, cool. So, and you're saying it's done in a way where it's like mutually exclusive. So it's not that while I love AFI corresponds with that particular number doesn't necessarily correspond with I love AFI, correct?
Exactly. So there are multiple things that can lead to this number, although it's very, very hard to do that. And the most important thing is that if I give this number, it's impossible mathematically to actually figure out that I love AFI created it. Like you can't go back to that. You can, if you know I love AFI and try to hash it, you always get the same number. But if you get a number, it's impossible for you to figure out what text created it unless you try many, many texts and hash all of them until you find one that lists it. Okay? That's the key thing that you all have to understand. I'm going to pause for a second and again look in random people's eyes to make sure that you got this hash thing, because it's going to be critical later on. I can't see the second screen of my that has Claire and Rebecca. I don't see your faces, so you have to at least kind of do a thumbs up. I'm just looking at the second screen to see you doing thumbs up so I can understand. Ellie Snyder, thumbs up from you. I want to see that you get it. Perfect. Okay. Jess Hess, thumbs up for you. actually looking for the thumbs up place. Okay. I'm assuming you got this because I'm going to make it now more complex. So we're going back.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm sorry if this is making you reiterate, but could you please just do a brief overview of why you need the hash, just to make sure?
Perfect, Erin. That's a great question. That's a perfect question. It gives me a chance to do it second time, and it's going to be a third. It's going to be a third time. So here is a story that I'm going to make up right now. Here is Alice here. I'm going to make sure she has only 2. And here is Bob here. This is Alice. This is Bob. They did all this first step of creating 2 keys. Each of them. Private, public, private, public. Then they exchange them. So Alice gave her public key and Bob gave his public key. And then when Alice wanted to send a message to Bob, she wrote the message, "I love you." And then she used his key to encrypt it. And she got the cipher X, Y, Z, U, V, W. And then she sent it to Bob. Somewhere on the way sits our villain, and he stopped it, and he changed the X, Y, Z, U, V, W to X, Y, Z, T, V, W. Change one letter. Remember, the villain couldn't open it. He couldn't. He doesn't have this was Bob's private key. He doesn't have Bob's. Sorry, this is Bob's public key. He doesn't have Bob's, right? So he couldn't open it. All he could do was change something on the letter, and then sends it to Bob. Bob gets X, Y, Z, T, V, W. So instead of getting X, Y, Z, U, V, W, he gets X, Y, Z, T, V, W. Then he tries to open that with his private key. And what he gets is something. Maybe he gets I love you with a typo here. Maybe he gets totally garbled text, but whatever the villain didn't know what he's doing. He didn't know that if he changes this thing, it's going to lead to this change. He just made it so that whatever Bob got wasn't what Alice sent. So by changing one thing on the way, he interrupted the conversation between Alice and Bob, such that whatever Bob got wasn't what Alice sent, which means that the message was tampered with. And if the villain can do this to many, many messages along the way, maybe 1 out of a billion times when he changes one letter, he actually makes the message I love you change into I hate you. Or to give me, instead of $2, give someone else $2. So those changes, even though no one knows what they are, the villain doesn't know exactly what they are, could end up causing damage. So what we want is to find a way to prevent that. And the hash will help us. And I'm going to show you now how. Did you get the problem so far? I didn't show how you solved it, but is the problem clear?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
So now we're going to actually show why it solves, how it helps us. So here's the full story. Here's Alice again. I'm going to repeat it many, many times today. Saying the same story, so you're going to know it really, really well by the end of the day. Here's Bob. Key 1, key 2. To make it easy to myself, here is key 2 of Bob. Okay, by now you already know this is the private key of Bob. Here is key 1 of Bob, and here is key 2 of Bob. Alice wants to tell Bob, I love you. She's going to use Bob's key here to encrypt that. And she's gonna get the message X, Y, Z, U, V, W. But here's what she's gonna do now. She's gonna do one more thing. She's gonna also take the message I love you before it's encrypted, and she's gonna run it through the hash function. You get a number, 233. And she's gonna send Bob two things. She's gonna send Bob the message and also the number 232. So Bob gets now two different things. One is a number, so far means nothing. The other thing is a message that was encrypted. The message is X, Y, Z, U, V, W. What does it do with this? Someone screams, by now you know it.
Opens it with his private key.
Fantastic. First, he takes his private key to unlock it. Then he gets the message, I love you. But now he wants to know if it was actually not tampered with. So what he does is he uses the same hash function, which everyone has. It's a function that everyone can use to hash this thing. And he gets the number 232. And now he says, I got 232 from Alice. I got 232 from the decrypted message. Are those two the same? If they're the same, I know that A, this was not tampered by anyone. I know that no one could decrypt it because only I opened it with my private key. And I know that because the hash function matches what I got from Alice, it's the same thing. So he does I love you into a hash, she does I love you into a hash, and sends the hash, and then he can compare that. This was complex. Let me go over that again from the beginning through all the steps. Okay, I want you to look at it for a second, make sure you see what I'm seeing. I'm gonna do the entire sequence again from the beginning.
Moran, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Before, so are you saying that the hacker cannot change one of the numbers or letters from in the hash?
So what the hacker can do. So let's talk. That's a great question. Let's talk about from the perspective of the hacker. I'm gonna erase this for a second. And we're gonna tell the story from the perspective of a hacker. The hacker sees two things passing through he sees the number 232, and he sees X, Y, Z, U, V, W. He decides to interrupt the process. So he takes the letter Z and replaces it with the letter with a symbol $. This is what Bob gets. Bob gets X, Y, $, U, V, W, and the number 232. So then he uses his private key to open it. Because this was changed, he wouldn't get I love you. He would get something else. He would get maybe the word I love you without the letter E. Okay? Then he would hash that. If you hash something with a different thing, you don't get 232, you get like 379. Because it's a different message. Alice hashed I love you with the letter E, and Bob hashed I love you without the letter E. He gets a totally different numbers. When he compares the number he got to what he got from her, not gonna match, he won't know what happened. He won't know that the letter E was changed. All he would know was that someone on the way changed something. So you would tell Alice, it didn't work. Send it to me again, or this time we have to meet in person. He would tell her, I don't know what happened, but I do know that on the way, the message was tampered with. Because when I hashed the output, it didn't match what you sent me. So I know it was, I don't know what was done, I don't know by who, I don't know anything, but I know that it's not what was sent by you. Something was tampered with. I'm gonna change, I'm gonna ask you to do it again, and second, send it in a different way, meet me in person, do something like this. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to be able to know when we open a message whether or not someone tampered with it.
I understand that, but I'm asking, is the hacker able to change something on the hash number, or the hash cannot be?
The hacker could also change this to a number, any number he wants, like 449. So then Bob will get the number, they get this message and the number 449. When he opens this message, he gets 379 and they won't match the 449. It's impossible for the hacker to change the hash to the correct hash of the inside message without knowing the inside message. So the hacker doesn't know what's written behind this thing. So he can't really change he doesn't know that if he changes $Y to dollar, it actually changes what's underlying from the letter E to no E.
So
all he knows he can change something.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, it's kind of layered then, right? So the hash just puts something else on top of it. So no matter what, if the hacker like attacks it, changes that number, doesn't matter. The underneath number is going to stay the same. So you could
Exactly.
send it out and it's 232, change to 429, whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, the key is still going to open the same thing underneath that.
Exactly. And I'll say it in a kind of this message only goes with 232. Any change will lead to something else. You can change this, or you can change this. It doesn't matter which one, but as long as you don't know what's under the XY, you cannot ever change something that will actually tell you what's the 232. So as long as the hacker cannot open a message, he can change things. Whatever he changes means that when Bob gets it, it wouldn't match. And he would say, okay, I don't know who did, I don't know what was done. All I know is that the message, the 449 doesn't match what I get 232. Or that if the number is 232 and something here was changed, it will be 232, but it doesn't match. The number here will be 379. You can do a lot of changes, but you can't do all the changes without knowing the inside text. So the hacker can change the encrypted stuff, but he cannot actually know how to create the right hash without knowing the real text. Because only the text "I love you" creates 232. I'm gonna now say everything I said up to now again from the beginning. So I'm gonna go through it again because it's so important that we're gonna go through the entire process one more time to make sure we're on the same page. Because that's a key part of the way. Here's Alice. Here's Bob. And I'm doing everything from the beginning. Alice has two keys. One she calls her private, one she calls her public. Bob creates similarly two keys. One he calls his private, one he calls his public. And the magic between those keys is that whatever is locked with one is unlocked with the other. Alice shares her public key. This is Alice's public. And Bob shares his public key. And when Alice wants to write a message to Bob, before she starts, she runs the message through a hash function and she gets a number, and the number is 252. That's important. This number goes with this text. If you change one letter here, if you write love with small e, you get a totally different number here. You get suddenly number 797. Okay, so she makes sure that she uses capital E here, and she gets the number 232. Then she takes Bob's public key and encrypts the message, and she gets encrypt the message X, Y, Z, U, V, W. And she sends to Bob two things: the number 232 and the message X, Y, Z, U, V, W. Bob gets this message and he uses his private key to unlock it. And he gets the message, I love you. So he got a message, but he's still not sure whether someone may have changed something on the way. So then he takes this message and runs the message to the hash function. And he gets to the answer 232. He says, okay, I got 232 for the encrypted message that only I could open. And it matches the thing I got from Alice. So I know that it's unopened by anyone else and untampered by anyone else. If either the number he gets here is 232, it doesn't match what he got from Alice. He doesn't know what happened, but he knows that something doesn't line up. That the message that is sitting here wasn't the one that was sitting here. And he says to Alice, something happened, I don't know what it is, let's try something else.
So I'm curious, theoretically then, could you put in like a fail-safe into it? So no matter what, if anybody opens it, the number gets scrambled?
Yeah.
To that type of thing, that would be something that is another.
So in a way the hash could be even more complex, such that if someone just even touches it without changing anything, it also, like you can put basically a timestamp on the hash. So if someone actually touches it, it's already, but MD5 is so fail-safe right now that people didn't even go one step further, but it's possible entirely to do that. Okay, so this satisfies two of the three things we wanted. It satisfies the encryption. It was encrypted throughout the process. So when it went here, it was encrypted with the public and private key system. And it satisfies the integrity component, which is when the message arrives, the opener can know that no one touched it on the way. But there's still one big problem with this system. And to understand this system's problem, I'm going to take us back for a second to the forest in the beginning. Because this problem already existed there. And some of you maybe have noticed that what I told you in the beginning is actually a lie. The system I showed you with the people standing in the box is actually failing on one occasion. So let's go back to the beginning. Here's Alice. And here's Bob. And they're sitting again next to the forest with the villain. And even though I described the system as a fantastic system, it actually could fail entirely. In the following way, and I see some people already suggested this system in the chat. Here is the protocol from Alice's perspective. Alice takes a box, puts gold in this box, and then puts a lock on the box and sends it away. What she expects is within a few minutes to get a box back that has two locks on it. One lock is hers and the other is not hers. What she does then is she goes and removes her locks and sends it back to the forest, and she thinks everything works out. Someone can tell me where is the flaw in this system? I see that some of you already suggested, but someone can scream it right now for everyone to know.
She doesn't know Bob got it at all.
Right.
Someone could have intercepted the reception of the box.
This entire protocol relies basically on us believing that the system works, saying works, but the villain could pretend to be Bob. The villain could sit here and say, okay, here's a box. I know the protocol. A box comes to the forest with a lock. I put my lock on the box, send it back. Alice gets a box with two locks, unlocks one of them, sends it back to me, and I, the villain, now opens the box, open the box, take all the apples, put snakes instead, and then sends this to Bob. What is Bob's protocol? Bob knows that somebody gets a box with a lock. And when he gets this box with a lock, all he has to do is add his own lock and send it back. The villain gets, after a few seconds, the box from Bob with two locks, removes his original lock, sends it back, and Bob opens it, Bob gets all the snakes inside. And Bob will blame Alice for that. So the villain can play Bob for Alice, and can play Alice for Bob, and each of them will not know that there was another person in the middle that did all those shenanigans. At the same time, they will have played by the rules and fell into the villain's prey. This attack is known as man in the middle, and it's the attack that collapsed for a while the entire system. Because even though the system we started with is fantastic, I can interact with someone, I have to know that the other person on the other side is who he is. And if I need for that to meet him and see, okay, that's who he is, actually the entire system falls apart. We wanted to find a system, it doesn't require a meeting. So there's actually a problem in this system, but fortunately, mathematics is going to help us now solve that. So everyone got the problem first? Let's give me some thumbs up so I can see that you all got the problem. What's the problem with the initial system? Pablo, thumbs up. Not getting anything. Someone text Pablo to give me a thumbs up before I start. In the meantime, TK.
I got it.
Perfect. Okay. I got 2. Pablo, you're responsible for giving a thumbs at some point so I can feel comfortable moving on. So you got the problem.
What's this?
That's the problem. Okay, fantastic. So now you got the third problem of our system, which is authentication. We need for Alice and for Bob to find a way when they interact to know that the other person is who they claim they are. What in this system that we created so far is the one thing that only Bob has that tells us it's Bob, and only Alice has tells us it's Alice. That's the one thing that no one else but Alice has. For instance, what is that?
Private key?
Fantastic. Who said that? I can't see.
Nicole. Sorry, I'm outside, so hi.
Nicole, you got a point.
Yay.
It's true. The private key is the one thing that every person has that no one else has. Now we're going to use that to solve the third problem of our system, which is authentication. So again, to the drawing board. Here is, let's use different colors. Here is Alice. Alice has 2 keys. One is her private, one is her public. Here is Bob. Bob has 2 keys. One is his private, one is his public. They exchange keys. So Alice also has Bob's public, and Bob also has Alice's public. And now, the entire experience. Alice wants to send to Bob the message, I love you. First, she hashes this message and gets the number 252. Then, she takes Bob's public key and encrypts that to get the encrypted message XYZUVW. Prior, she used to send this and this to Bob. But now we're going to add one more step. What she's going to do now is she's going to take her private key. That's the only thing that only Alice has. Her private key, and she's gonna encrypt the hash. So she's gonna come up with a number A, B, C. Now she's gonna send to Bob those 2 things. The message and the encrypted hash of the plain message. It gets complicated. Hopefully you're still with me. Bob gets the following. He gets X, Y, Z, U, V, W. First thing he does is he uses his own private key to decrypt that. And he gets the message, I love . Second thing he does, he runs the hash and gets 252. 252 does not match ABC. But he also got the ABC here. And presumably, the ABC came from Alice. If that is true, then what opens Alice's private key? You. Alice's private key, which he has. So he uses Alice's public key to open that, gets 252, and then those match, and he knows the following things. He knows that if the message was opened with Alice's public key here, it means it was closed with Alice's private key, which only Alice has. Because this he didn't share with anyone. So he knows that it's coming from Alice, and he also knows it's not tampered with, because what came from Alice matches the hashed of the encrypted message that only he could encrypt with his public key that matches the private key he has. I'm gonna slow down and give you a full minute, where I'm just gonna wait to look at this entire screen and contemplate on that before you start asking me any question you want. That's the essence of the technology we're gonna talk about in a second, but I need you to make sure you get this, and even if you're gonna tell me all that you get it, I'm gonna still do it from the beginning to the end again one more time, but I want you to first look at it and see if everything makes sense. The minute starts right now. I'm taking a time. Questions about that? I see that in the chat, I'm going to read them.
Yeah,
I got it all until about this private key, and it worked when I said ABC. First, perfect again. I'm going to go back over it again. That's the only question?
I have a question about this.
Another question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So basically, the only thing that's different in this scenario is that Alice is also encrypting the original hash number with her private key. So when Bob decrypts that with her public key, he knows that that was from her, and that should match what he got from his private key from the message. So Alice just has to encrypt the hash with her private key, and that's the only thing that's different.
Yeah, that's the one that's different. That's mechanically and conceptually, you see why it's important, because Alice is the only one who has the private key of Alice. I see people getting it, but ask me more questions.
So in order to send any message, the first thing that you need, no matter what, is the person that you're sending that message public key. Without that, you cannot do it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So the cumbersome component here is that before you talk to any person in the world, you first have to find a public key and share with them your public key. That's step one before you even start talking, and then you can talk to them. And if I want to send a message, let's say I want to write I love you to all of you, I would have to get, 77 different public keys, and there would be one message to James, the same message, but it looks different after I encrypt it to James. And if I encrypt it to Nicole, it would be Nicole public key. I'm going to get it to look totally different than James's. And if I send it to Brett, I'm going to take a message and encrypt it with Brett's public key and send it. So each message is going to look totally different. And only Nicole could open Nicole's message and only Brett could open Brett's message because they have the pair of matching public and private keys. Okay? Even though I think you're getting it, based on my question, I'm going to start over and do it the entire process again one more time. I think I learned it to use. Someone had a question? So
I think there's 2 hands up, so that's there's one.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was like high-fiving me.
No, they can go before.
So sorry, Will and Sebastian, please.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, the hash is actually sent twice in this situation where it's encrypted as like the ABC, and then it's also contained within the message, which is also encrypted. Because is that correct or no?
So it's not sent twice. The message can be hashed. So if you send a message, you basically send the hash of the message also. Right? In sending this,
why would for example, if there was the villain there and they did sort of like the lock example that you suggested before, how would I understand that it would, if Bob then received that, how would he know it was exactly tampered? Because there's the additional layer of encryption with the hash where it would just, I guess, not work. Is that he wouldn't
exactly
know? Okay.
It wouldn't work. In this system, you never know who the villain is or what actually was changed. All you know is that it's not coming from Alice and that something happened. And then you have to find a different way.
But I guess if he didn't know what the information he was receiving, he would just, if it was gibberish, he just would presume it's gibberish and that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And even if it was gibberish, he could still hash the gibberish and get a number. And the number, so imagine that what he got is totally like chaos. Like imagine that someone tampered with it. And what he got was like A, B, C, D, E, F, which opens to just gibberish. He would still be able to hash the gibberish, get the number 793, and he would get the ABC, or maybe this was also tampered with. He can open it 252, and he would say, okay, 252 doesn't match 793. Someone did something. I don't know what it is. I know that this was not what was sent. Moving on. Does that make sense, Will? And I'm going to still go over it again, just to be clear, but I think you're starting to get the right vision. Sebastian, you had the same question.
Yes. Hi. I guess like in this scenario, so of course Alice's public key is accessible to anyone, right?
Right.
So you're kind of, especially for the last step, like the authentication step, you're kind of relying on the integrity of the hash, right? So why can't you, I'm sorry if you already mentioned this, but why can't theoretically someone reverse engineer the hash?
So that you have to trust mathematicians. The way we define the hash and the way it was established is that if you know the number 252, you cannot figure out I love you made it. It's just how it was created. So if you it's basically, think of the I love you example I gave you before. I said let's just count vowels, which was too simple. But let's say we count vowels and multiply them by the location. So this is location 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we say, okay, vowel 1 times 1. Vowel 2 times 3, location 3. Vowel 3 times 5. Vowel 4 times 7. Vowel 5 times 8. I already created a number, a hash that depends on number of vowels, but also on the location, which means that even if you wrote I love you this way, it will be a different hash, right? Even if I just kind of flip the O and the U, different hash. So hash was created such that any small change would change everything entirely. So anyone can, and you can never go back from this number to I love you. So that is one of our kind of key assumptions, that this is how the mathematician created it. So no one can get 252 and say, oh, I love you is the text that created it. or get ABC that turns into 252 and still know the number. So anyone in the world that sees ABC can turn ABC into 252 because everyone in the world has Alice's public key. So anyone can do this. But remember, just a second ago, you were okay with sending 252 plain. So you had no problem with sending 252 before. Now we just added one more layer, which is also encrypted 252 to make sure that it's Alice's. But in a way, knowing 252 doesn't give you anything. It's just a stamp of approval. You don't get the message from 252. Am I answering the question?
Yes, thank you.
Be on the safe side by going through the entire process from the beginning. It's going to be tedious potentially for some of you, but I think I learned that it's really, really useful to see it being developed step by step throughout from the beginning. So I'm going to go through the entire process. It's going to take us 3 more minutes, and I think it's going to carry everyone with us. So we have 2 people. I'm going to call them Alice and Bob. Alice has 2 keys. One is private, which she keeps close to her heart, and one is public, that she immediately shares on the internet, so Bob has it. At the same time, Bob creates 2 keys. One is private, only he shares, and one is his public, he shares with everyone, including Alice. When Alice wants to send a message to Bob saying, I love you, she first runs the message I love you before she encrypts it through a magical function that does some useful analysis of the text and it gives a number. And if you know this number, you have no idea what text is, but if I give you I love you, you can easily get this number. Second thing she does is she encrypts this message with Bob's public key and gets the ciphertext X, Y, Z, U, V, W. From that point on, she cannot go back. She cannot open it because she doesn't have his public key. She does one more thing. She takes the hashed data and she encrypts that with her private key. The thing that only she in the world has. And she gets something ABC. And now she sends on the internet 2 things, the ABC and the X, Y, Z, U, V, W, which make their way to Bob. Bob first takes the X, Y, Z, U, V, W and uses his private key to open it. And he gets the message, I love you. So he knows that it was encrypted, but he doesn't know yet that no one actually did anything to it before. He takes the encrypted message and he runs it through the hash which everyone in the world has, including him. And he gets 252. From Alice, he got ABC. He got 252. He wants to know if this ABC codes 252. The claim is that it came from Alice. So he takes Alice's public key and opens it and gets 252. And now because 252 matches what's in, you got 2 more things satisfied. One, you know it came from Alice, because Alice's private key opened it, which means that Alice's private key closed it, and Alice's private key only exists with Alice. And also because 252 matches 252, he knows that no one else touched it, otherwise it wouldn't look the same. That's how it satisfies three things. I suggest that you take a screenshot of this, even though I will do the same for you. Save the photos. Saved. Okay. So at the end of this, I'm going to also put some slides for everyone to have. So this will be one of them. It summarizes everything we did. But hopefully you all got this. And now you ask yourself, what does it have to do with blockchain? That's the next step.
I have a quick question.
Perfect.
So are you saying that 252 just can't be tampered with? And that's why it doesn't matter if ABC is opened. Is that untamperable, basically?
So it's tamperable, or if it's tamperable, you know. So anyone can change the 252 to 253. But I love you. I love you always to makes it turns to 252. So if someone changed 252 to 253, then it's not I love you that created it.
Right. So let's just say the for whatever reason the authentication is tampered with, and 252 is changed to 352.
Yeah.
What happens?
Bob says I didn't. What I got here is not what I got. When I open the message and I hashed it, I don't get the same thing I get when I unlock what I got from Alice. Something happened. Stop the process. Start over somewhere else.
Okay, so you would. So somebody could go around just tampering with the authentication process pretty easily.
Absolutely. So people in the world can still make our life hard by just continuously changing bits on the internet, and everyone would have to say like, I don't know what happened, but there's a problem, and we have to meet in person a lot of times. We have to do a lot more things to work, but at least no one read our messages. And we're never gonna rely on false data. So that's what we're trying to solve here. If someone makes our life hard by just constantly changing things, we're gonna have to find ways to talk to people in person or to find other mechanisms to interact. But at least no one can hack into our life, which is what this system tries to solve.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So how am I doing with time? Let me check first. Perfect. So I'm going to use the last 20 minutes of the day to take us from this to blockchain, and then it's going to give you a couple of 24 hours to ponder upon the next step, which will be how blockchain works and how it relates to your business. So now one step above blockchain. So to understand blockchain, the best way I found to teach that is actually to start with Bitcoin, which is an implementation of that, and then go backwards into blockchain. So I'm going to explain to you the kind of essence of Bitcoin first, and then going to make it a little bit more complex. At the heart of how Bitcoin works in terms of transaction is the removal of the banks from the system. So right now in the world, there's a bank here. And what the bank actually is a big table that says how much money each of you has. So it has Moran, $3. It has your name and the dollar amount. Moran, $3. Chris, $1 million. Janet, $4 million. A big table with all of our transactions. If you kind of go back to the Westerners, there's a person with a shotgun who sits there with a big notebook, and in the notebook it says for every person in the village how much money they have in the safe. And when a person comes and says, I need my money, this person, the banker, says, let's open the notebook. It says in the notebook that Chris has $1 million, and he gives Chris a bag of gold with $1 million, and he removes the line from the database. So one person essentially manages this big table. You give them money, they put it in the safe, and they write a line in the notebook. That's the system of banking that we know of. Bank of America, Citibank, Chase, all of those banks essentially are a big table like that. At some point in your life, you gave them money, and they wrote a line in a table that says how much money of the money they have in the safe is yours. And you can just do things by calling them and saying, hey, move a little bit from my account to this bank account, and they put different number on your line, different number on their line. That's how money moves in the world. The essence of Bitcoin is that you remove the bank, and instead of a bank having the database, everyone has a copy. So here is Moran, here is Chris, here is Doron. Everyone has on the computer a table that says how much money everyone else has. And let's say Moran wants to move 2 Bitcoins to Chris. Moran looks at the table and he says, here's in the table, I'm zooming in. Here's the line that says Moran 5 Bitcoins. The line that says Chris 3 Bitcoins. I want to move 5 Bitcoins to Chris. So after this move on my table, this should say Moran 0, and this should say Chris 8. But I want everyone else to do the same. So I tell everyone, guys, I want you to take the line Moran and remove 5 Bitcoin from it. And everyone gets the same message, such that Chris on his table also has to write Moran 0, Chris 8, and Doron also has to put in his table Moran 0, Chris 8. So as long as the 3 of us keep a copy of the table, we can interact. Every time one of us wants to do something, we tell the other, right now you should change the lines, and because the money anyhow is mostly not in paper but on the internet and some kind of numbers, as long as we all keep the same table with the same data, we actually moved money. We just move money by all changing the same line. We don't need the bank to do it. We all update it. So it means that we all have to constantly tell each other what we want to do, and this is how the system works. This is a very, very simplified version of what the Bitcoin system is. Let's make it more complex. What's actually written in the Bitcoin ledger on this big table that everyone has isn't just what the bank said, which is Moran 5. What's actually written there are 3 things always. The ledger looks like this. It has 3 columns. One is from, one is to, one is dollar. And the columns say the following. They say Moran, Chris, 5. Chris, Janet, 3. Janet, Moran, 4. Chris, Moran, 4. The ledger has a lot of lines, and each line describes the transaction. So if you want to know how much money Moran has at a given point, you have to go back from the beginning to the end, over all the lines, and see all the money that Moran moved out, all the money that moved into Moran, tally the numbers, and at the end you say, aha, Moran now has 5 Bitcoins. You get that by going through all the lines and calculating that. If you want to know how much money Chris has, you say, okay, Moran moved to Chris 5, so right now Chris has 5, and then Chris moved to Janet. So here is Chris getting 5, but then he moves 3, so he now has 2, and then he moves to Moran 4, so now he's minus 2. So to know how much Chris has, you have to go from the beginning to the end and look at all the lines with Chris, how much got in, how much got out, and that's how you know how much money Chris has. And everyone has to do all of that simultaneously on their tables to actually know what's happening in this system at any given point. So how does a transaction on the Bitcoin system looks? We're beginning with everyone having this table with the 3 lines, the from, the to, and the dollars amount. This is Moran's table. This is Chris's table. And this is Doron's table. Okay. Moran wants to move 2 Bitcoins to Chris. He basically creates a text that looks like this. Moran, Chris, 3 Bitcoins. And he sends this thing to Chris, and he sends a similar one. It says MC3 to Doron. When Chris gets it, he needs to see that Moran actually has 3 Bitcoins to give. So he first goes over the entire table from the beginning to the end, just checking that Moran actually has 3 Bitcoins. If he sees yes, Moran has 3 bitcoins, he adds to the table a line at the end that says MC3. At the same time, Doron does the same thing. Looks at the entire table, sees if Moran has all the money, and if he does, he also adds the line MC3, and Moran also adds the line to his table MC3. This is how everyone at any given point has an accurate description of the system. And at any point, you cannot just move on you don't have, because everyone, when they get a transaction, first checks to see that the person that moves the money actually has the money. This is what's happening all the time online. Now, let's make it more complicated. Why would Chris do that? What's Chris's incentive to spend time every time he sees a transaction, going from the beginning to the end over the entire table and checking that it's actually working? The incentive is the following. Every person who gets a transaction doesn't just do what it says it has to do, add the line Moran to Chris 3. They actually try to add 2 lines. One says Moran to Chris 3, and the other one, let's call it God, to, if it's Chris, to Chris 1. And Doron, on his end, tries to add the following line. God to Doron 1. And even Moran, who wanted to send it, also tries to add the same 2 lines. One saying Moran to Chris 3, and one saying God to Moran 1. Everyone simultaneously tries as fast as possible to add 2 lines. One line is the line that Moran asked them to please try to verify and put in your table. The other line is a line that everyone puts with their own name and saying, the God, the world, everyone else agrees that I have 1 more Bitcoin. So 2 lines are being investigated at any given moment. One, the one that everyone wants to add, and the other one, everyone trying to add money to their own account just for doing the service. Now, if everyone wants to do that, what would make it so that Chris gets this line, or that Doron, or that Moran? They're doing it on time. So everyone tries to be as fast as possible in going through everything from the beginning, seeing that Moran indeed has the 3 Bitcoins to give to Chris, and then also adding the money to themselves. How do we know who did it first? There's actually a 4th square here in everyone's place, where they put the time that they finished checking from the beginning to the end that the table works, and that they wanted to add this thing. And then, because still there's a competition and everyone wants to do it fast, they take this entire thing, this entire 7 cells matrix, M, C3, God, C1 at a time, which we're now going to call a block, and they try to hash it. You get a number. So at the same time, Chris tries to add the 7 squares, M, C3, God, Chris 1 at a time, and hash that. And Doron tries M, C3, God, Doron 1 at a time, and hash that. And Moran tries M, C3, God, Moran 1, and hash that. And here's the magic. The rule of Bitcoin says that when you hash things, if you end up getting a number that starts with 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 12 ones, you win. How does it work? Because in this magic cell here, they don't just put a time, they also put a random text. So Chris can add the time and a random text and hash that. And when you add the time and a random text and hash that, you probably get a number 252. Not working. So you put a different random text, and you hash it, and you get 777. Not good. You put a different random text. So every person tries to first validate the table makes sense, then put the time and random sequence of characters which they hash, hoping to get a number that has 32 digits that starts with 12 ones. Let me say that from the beginning again, because it's critical. When Doron here, it has a table, it's Doron, sees that a transaction that looks like this is about to be added, he adds also the sentence Doron, God to Doron 1, some random text A, B, C, D, and the number 1207, and then he sends all of this into the hash. Most likely he gets the hash 393. This number doesn't work. So he goes back and he changes these letters to A, Q, V, and he hashes that. And he gets a number 1173. Not good. So he goes back and he hashes and he puts the number 11279, just random X. And he hashes that. And he gets 11,397,446. Random number doesn't work. And he keeps trying to change this random text again and again until at some point he will magically, by trying a lot of things, get a number that looks like this: 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and something else: 3, 5, 4, 7, 9, and so on. Because everyone has a computer, and people can try billions of numbers here, billions of texts at any given fraction of a second, within 10 minutes of people just trying to put random numbers, one person in the world is going to manage to make it. So if all people in the world are just trying randomly to do this thing, to take this text, add their name here, and put some random text here, and hash that, within 10 minutes, someone will get a number that starts with 12 zeros. Whoever gets that first tells everyone, guys, if you put here the text, if you put here the word Doron, and here the text XYZ377112, and the time is 1207, you get this number. Everyone can try that. Everyone can try to put this number with this person's name with this time and see that they get number 1. And this is how they know that Doron was first. They can validate that it actually did it, and everyone accepts that Doron was first, so they add to their tables the lines Moran to Chris 5 and God to Doron 1. And Doron won this. Every 10 minutes, if everyone tries to do that, one person will succeed. That's based on how many computers are trying that at the same time. We know how many computers are in the world, so we can know that it will take 10 minutes. If everyone tries, it will take 10 minutes to succeed in that, by just trying random numbers. This process of adding those two lines, one line that proves that Moran gave Chris 5 bitcoins, and that a new bitcoin is created and given to Doron, is called mining a bitcoin. Because right now, a new bitcoin is added to the system from no one. So no one had to lose money. That's why I call it God, or call it the world, or the system. Doron now has additional bitcoin that didn't exist before, and everyone agrees to it because he was the first. So what happened here is that every player in the system keeps a copy of the database, so we don't need a bank, and everyone spent time trying to validate Moran's transaction. So everyone is making an effort to make sure the system is working. And one guy also gets to win money for that, but because we don't know who this person is, everyone tries. So we get the benefit of everyone working for the system, everyone making an effort to keep things working because they hope that maybe they're gonna get Bitcoin for free. I'm pausing here for a second, and I want everyone to tell me if they got this step, because this is a big leap from before. We use the hash to now give us one more power. The power to know that someone did the right thing that everyone tried to do. Pausing and looking at your faces or your thumbs up to know that you got it. Perfect.
I have a question.
Excellent.
When people are
Who is it?
sending,
I don't
like
see. Okay, see.
when people are sending amounts to each other, are they also using their keys and hashes like we learned before?
Not yet. Yeah, the answer is yes, but this is the next step. So far, the answer is yes, but forget what I just said.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just out of curiosity, again, you're explaining to us how Bitcoin operates, but aren't we already beyond this system then, where basically there are Bitcoin mining operations that are operating like big banks who are basically controlling the ledger?
Absolutely. You're again ahead of me. We're gonna make it complicated in a second. Trust me. Yes, it's true. Like it's a lot more complicated than what I said. Not a lot more, but like if you got up to here, by the way, this was the hardest kind of challenge that we had to go through conceptually. It's gonna be easier from now on, but you have to overcome this one hurdle right now, which even if you think you did, you will forget it in an hour because it's not intuitive. So take a look at it again. It's another screenshot-worthy slide for you to get kind of what I'm talking about. We wanted everyone to keep a copy of the ledger and to do work, to constantly validate each other's transactions. The way we got it is by saying, look, you're gonna do the work, and for doing the work, you stand a chance to get money that everyone agrees you have. It's as if we just kind of created more coins in the system, minted one more coin. And the competition here is just on computer processes. Because if someone tries for 10 minutes to put random numbers, they will end up finding a number that leads to end with many, many ones. It will happen. Just like you need to try enough times, it's gonna work. So we're just competing on computer power and putting the effort. So as long as the computer is on and minting, there's a chance that you will be finding that. It's just if you have to give more time of the computer to be the first all the time. So if you donate your time, in this case, to validate each other's transactions, you're basically helping the system, and you have a chance of winning money from that.
I'm confused. At first, I thought you said whoever validates the transaction first would get the Bitcoin. So what is the random element of putting in random numbers to try to get this 12 ones?
If you we don't want the same person who has the most amount of computers to always win. So what we said also is you're gonna have to get to this 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and for that you have this random number. So if the transaction looks like this, MC5, God to Doron 1, and here always the person who gets it first wins this thing. Then someone in New York who has a computer that is super powered will always put their name here. Wall Street guy here, the time here, and they will win the money. We want it to be kind of, we want everyone to try, but we want it to be fair. So we say, if you just take this block and try to hash it, you probably will get a number that looks like 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 2, 3, not giving you this thing. We want everyone to try. So how do we make everyone try? We add this element here that everyone can put a random number, and only the person who gets the number 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 wins. And this makes everyone try, not just this one guy, because even if you're the person with the fastest computer, there's just someone else will actually correctly get the number here, and they will get the money. So we basically distribute the chances of everyone else. It's like it's like everyone gets a lottery ticket, because you don't know which number here is going to lead to 111. So every 10 minutes there's a lottery game, and someone might win the lottery, and if you give more time, you buy more tickets to the lottery. You try more times. So each try is another ticket. Okay, I'm pausing here because this is, I think we said this is, am I correct? Right? This was the end of the time that we gave today. We did a lot already, so we got to the hardest part in a way, and that's a good place for you to kind of take a second and pause on that. We're gonna start tomorrow by going 5 minutes back to ensure that we got that and that you remember everything. Today there was no entertainment. We're just getting the kind of ropes of that. It's gonna be fast from here, I promise. Thank you for today already. Questions?
about how is it controlled or made sure that everybody's ledgers are staying the same? Like, what's stopping somebody from just adding a bunch of Bitcoins to their own ledger and pretending like it's real?
Okay, so I'm gonna repeat this question tomorrow again. So because it's a good question to everyone to know. So no one's gonna miss it. The answer is that if you, Brett, add whatever lines to your thing, you will have maybe 1 billion Bitcoins, but no one else will do it. So tomorrow when you try to use them, then you say Brett buys Universal Studios for $1 billion. Everyone else will say, wait, I see transaction says Brett to Universal $1 billion, and they say, well, I'm checking my table and Brett doesn't have this money, so I'm just gonna cancel this transaction, not gonna edit. So it's as if you think about it like in the context of monopoly, you print your own money, you have tons of money in your own monopoly money, but when you go to buy something with it, no one else accepts that. So you can create your own ledger the way you want, but no one else will have a copy of that. If you convince everyone else, then that's total different. But that's, again, it's as if you tell everyone else, please accept my monopoly money. So as long as you're the only one at it, or even you and your best friend or your mom at it, it's not relevant until everyone else accepts it. And that's the kind of idea here. More questions?
There you go. So just so I'm understanding correctly, it's just like the group has to come to a conclusion of like, this is how much this is worth, and that's what validates whatever the amount is that is within it. But what if, like, this is theoretical, I guess, you get enough people that are in this group that say this is something that's not that, and add money to the Bitcoin, not just one person and then being validated by this type of thing. Is that like,
how do you say your name first? I want to use the name.
Sheriar.
Okay, one is the name. Perfect. And I'm seeing you, Ross and Brett. I see that you have your hands up now. I know how to read this, so I'm gonna get to you in a second. So totally works. So if everyone agrees, if you convince everyone to just decide that you have more money, it will work. That's true also for every banking system. So if you decide tomorrow that you're a billionaire and you just tell everyone I'm a billionaire and everyone says, fine, we accept it, it's the fair game. So if you think that money, and this we can go back to history, money only means something because everyone accepts this thing. So if you tell everyone, look guys, I want you to treat me as if I'm a billionaire, meaning when I come to you and I tell you to give me your yacht, you give it to me because I'm a billionaire, and then you got it. It's very, very hard because you have to go through every person, every participant, and tell them to either add your line or that you're a billionaire. And in that sense, that's what keeping the system safe, is that it's impossible to do that. But if you manage to, totally works. And if you...
So what I mean by this is then what if you're writing like a code for, like, this is what a hacker can do, right? Instead of just like, I guess you have to do it for everyone then, but like, let's say a select group, you can create a code that's like, hey, you're going to identify this one person as a billionaire because it's just systems that are running back and forth. So it's like, what prevents that from happening?
You answered it. You have to hack into everyone. So if you think about it, it's much more secure than the bank, because right now, if you hack into Bank of America one time, you can change whatever you want there. Now you have to hack into everyone's computers in the world and change everyone's ledger. So it's even safer than the bank. The bank was a one-spot location for hackers. So everyone tries to hack into Bank of America because it's if you manage to do it, fair game, like you can do whatever you want. So now it's a lot harder because everyone's computer has to be hacked for that to happen. So you have to be really a good hacker to make it work, and that's basically impossible. Ross, I see your hands.
I guess my question there is like is the inverse of what was just put forth, which is that what apparatuses exist in this system where you have what would be actually a legitimate transaction or an exchange, and for whatever reason, is it possible that the system doesn't validate it? So say I'm using my credit card today and I go somewhere and then all of a sudden I get a call that says, we think this is fraud, but it's not fraud. And in the world of Bitcoin, you're making these transactions, you have 1 billion Bitcoin to transfer, and someone says in that system, and it could be proved in the ledger, but for whatever reason it goes wrong. Is there a system set up basically to protect against the accurate or the valid things from having their integrity basically undermined?
So why would that happen? So that's a great question. So let's say you say Moran to Chris 5 bitcoins, and Doron hates you. So Doron says, I'm not validating it. So one guy says, I'm not adding it because he hates you. But other people in the world don't have anything to do with you, so they will just validate it. So you might have one guy who says, I don't agree, but because always the majority of the world will do it, then this guy would be out now. Like this guy will have a ledger that doesn't work. So when he tries to, like, he might keep a different ledger, and when he tries to say move on, people will say, hey, like at some point he's gonna try to, some people's gonna say this doesn't add up, like his ledger is totally out of sync. Ignore his, so he's gonna lose. So everyone has an incentive for that. I'm gonna repeat that example tomorrow to make sure everyone understands. But the example I'm gonna use always that is, think about blockchain like the suitcases belt at the airport. The suitcases, you come out of the flight, and all the suitcases come out. Everyone is each other's checks and balances, right? What prevents you from taking someone else's suitcase it's not locked. Everyone can in theory come and just take a suitcase and leave with that. But you kind of know that the person who owns it is there, and you look for yours and they look for theirs, and anyone kind of becomes each other's police.
Yeah,
that's the system here. So one person can try to do something, but then they leave it because it's not theirs. Someone is going to take theirs. Like it's very hard to break the system because everyone has a copy that is identical, and no one has an incentive to kind of hurt someone else. And if one person has an incentive to hurt you, it's not the other world. So there's no reason for a person in Bangladesh to intentionally want to not add yours. So they will do the right thing, and then the one person hates you would not. But most people are going to do the right thing, and that's going to work. Make it work.
Right. And then with that example you just provided of sort of an airport carousel, the idea of if everyone were to stop then validating transactions, then Bitcoin mining would stop. So like if bags were coming out onto the carousel and people stopped taking bags, would eventually bags stop coming out?
Absolutely. So if people just stop doing that, it's not going to work. We're going to do that tomorrow. So tomorrow you're going to see. So I'll give you a preview for tomorrow. This thing that starts with the 12 ones isn't just random. The number 12 ones is proportional to the number of computers who are operating and doing that. When Bitcoin started, it was only 3 ones. So basically the more people play, you make it harder for everyone to validate each other, such that it always takes 10 minutes. So the rule of thumb here is that every 10 minutes, a new coin is created based on how many people play in the game in the world, how many computers are working. If less computers play, it becomes, you make it easier or harder to mint one coin, such that it always stays 10 minutes. So the rule of Bitcoin, the only rule that matters here is that every 10 minutes, new coins are being created and new people are going to do the work. And tomorrow we're going to see why it's important. But that's true. If no one plays, then the system kind of halts and becomes easier or harder to work with.
Got it. Thank you.
Chris, you have a question?
Hello. Hey. So I have a question regarding a 51% attack, and how concerning is that realistically? And I guess could you explain how that works?
So I'm going to explain it again tomorrow. So this, because this is relevant to everyone else. So the only way by which what was suggested before, I think by Brett, could work is if Brett can say, I'm a billionaire. And if Brett goes to every person that has a table and says, please add this line to the table, and manages to do that, it's going to work. In fact, if he only gets to convince half people, 51%, a majority, to change their tables, then from now on, everyone's, like half people is going to have, 51% are going to have a table that says like, Brett is a billionaire, half would not, but since most people have a table that says a billionaire, everyone's going to agree with the majority. So if you convince the majority of people in the system that you're a billionaire, you're a billionaire. It's just because you don't know who's like, if you go outside the street right now, you have no idea who has a Bitcoin. Where are they sitting? Like, how would you convince them to do that? It's nearly impossible to convince the about 100 million people in the world right now who are holders of Bitcoins to add your line to the table. They have no incentives. But if you manage to, you're a billionaire. If you can, and this is, think about it in the concept of money, it's the same. If you're able to convince half the world, or even less in the world of banking, but let's say you can convince half the world that you're a billionaire you have zero money in your pocket, but everyone thinks you're a billionaire and they're willing to give you things for your wealth and so on, you got it. A lot of the wealthy people in the world right now might actually be bankrupt and we don't know it, but they have a credit that allows them to go to the bank and tell the bank, you know I'm a billionaire. give me more money, credit to buy a building. In a way, the system that we have right now, the banking system, is a lot more prone to this attack. If you convince someone that you're a billionaire, or half the people, or enough people, then you're a billionaire. And this system is no different. It's a little bit hard to do it here because you have no idea who they are. In the system we have right now in the world, it's just a bank. You just go to the Bank of America and you tell them I'm a billionaire, and if the banker believes you, you're a billionaire. That's it. They can change the numbers. In our system, you have to convince a lot more people, half and more. That's the attack. But I'm gonna say that again tomorrow. You have one more question? All right. I'm gonna let you guys ponder upon that and meet you again tomorrow. And tomorrow it's gonna be easier and more entertainment related. So we're gonna take it one step further. And there's a video of this recording, so if you want it, it's also available after this afternoon for you to kind of watch again for tomorrow. Thank you for the time. I know it's not easy, and I'm hopeful that you got it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Moran.
Yeah.
One question, this is not related to this, I guess, but like say like someone like Stefan Thomas, who's that guy who's got like $100 million in Bitcoin who can't access his account. So if the ledger can validate amongst all the other computers in the world that he has that money, but he can't log into his coin wallet, so to say, to access it, then why do we live in a world where like the larger community doesn't honor or respect his access to the currency that he controls? Is that just because he purely can't access his own hash keys?
If he can, so it's happened before. A person said, "Look, guys, this is really me. I just forgot my key. This is me." And if he convinces the world, if enough people say fine, then they can just basically everyone agrees that a new user is now him, and they say, okay, from now we just all together agree to add $1 billion to Giovanni, and from then on, so it could happen. You just have to again convince all of the world that you are who you say you are. So this Stefan has to go to everyone and say, like, guys, look, here you see that in this transaction for this much money happened when I was in Monaco and bought the yacht. So this is me buying the yacht. Please believe me. And if everyone agrees, it's gonna work. It's just getting harder and harder to do it because there's a lot of people out there, and you have to go to Bangladesh and China and India and Bolivia, like a lot of places where people do different things, and you have to convince all of them to let you kind of put the line that says, "This is me," and that's the beauty of
democracy of the world.
Yeah, it's very democratic. So today we're gonna talk about. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about the good and the bad. It's very democratic, because everyone has equal voice, whether you're kind of a billionaire or not. It's also very much risky, like you suggested, because if you just forget your private key, we didn't call it yet, but I'm going to call it tomorrow. If you just lose your password, your money is there, everyone can see the money, but you cannot get it out.
Cool. Thank you.
To be continued. Thank you, everyone.